It's that time of the year again for baseball. The long-awaited spring training is finally here. Dan Bartels here for WFUV Sports. In our earlier 2023 recap, we kind of covered the ebbs and flows of that team, specifically the ups and downs, and the specific sell-off of Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. And ultimately, now we're going to see the return and the fruits of that labor. The Mets were exchanging two future Hall of Famers solely for prospects and a little bit of cash. But think about that. Truly think about that. If you told a Mets fan this time last year that they would go 75 and 87 only to finish 29 whole games back of the Atlanta Braves, I'm not so sure what they would have done. But then again, you shouldn't tell them the World Series matchup for that year either. Spring training is a time for growth. There's no denying that. There's no denying that the Mets certainly have a lot of that to do. In this video specifically, we're going to cover the pre-spring training of the Mets down in Port St. Lucie, what to look for, what to expect as they get ready for opening day. The Mets added a bunch of new faces to the organization this past winter, and after the Mets missed out on the Yoshinobu Yamamoto sweepstakes, they relied more on short-term deals to help get them over this hump while last year's money got off the books. This while keeping the idea around that Kodai Senga is going to be the rock or ace of the staff, which he has proven capable to be. While that is still the case, the recent news of Kodai Senga likely starting the year off on the injured list is certainly troublesome. Through the beginning 2 weeks or so before spring training, Kodai Senga flared up what is known as a moderate right posterior capsule strain in his throwing shoulder. There's currently no timetable for his return, except that Kodai Senga will start the season on the injured list. In terms of the other pitchers in the rotation, the Mets brought back Jose Quintana, who struck out 60 batters over 70 innings last year, to the tune of only 5 home runs allowed, by the way. In terms of signings, the Mets brought in former Yankee Luis Severino on a 1-year $13 million contract, Sean Manaea on a 2-year $28 million deal with an opt-out option after the 2024 season. Traded for pitcher Adrian Hauser from the Brewers and outfielder Tyrone Taylor in exchange from the Mets for minor league pitcher Coleman Crowe. Hauser should be a back-end starter or in a long relief role with other names such as Tyler McGill, Jose Butto, and Joey Lucchesi. Pertaining to other arms in the Mets organization that they've signed, the Mets inked right-hander Jorge Lopez to a 1-year $2 million contract who not too long ago in 2022 had one of the best first halves in baseball. With the Orioles, Lopez pitched to a 1.62 ERA, had 17 saves, and struck out over a batter an inning in the first half alone. The Mets also added right-handers Michael Tonkin and Austin Adams on their individual 1-year deals. And the Mets losing a piece in Senga is obviously very unfortunate, but getting a piece back in Edwin Diaz is reassuring to anyone who follows baseball. The last time Met fans saw Edwin Diaz not being carted off the field in the World Baseball Classic, he was one of the most dominating pitchers in baseball in 2022, the year prior. Having Diaz back will be very crucial in a bullpen bringing back the other 2023 arms, the likes of Brooks Raley, Drew Smith, Phil Bickford, Josh Walker, Reed Garrett, Grant Hartwig, Sean Reed Foley, among others, and Adam Ottavino, who recently rejoined the Mets for another year after recently opting out. Yohan Ramirez was traded to the Mets from the Chicago White Sox in December for cash, but the latest 2 additions to the Mets bullpen, and likely the last, at least for now, have been signing free agent Jake Diekman to a $4 million guaranteed contract with a 2025 club option for another $4 million guaranteed if he pitches at least 58 games this season. The Mets claimed another free agent, Shinichiro Fujinami, off waivers at a $3.35 million rate and a 1-year incentivized pact that can unlock for an additional $850,000. Both Diekman and Fujinami will be big pieces to the Mets bullpen puzzle, and the cultivation of arms David Stearns loves to abide by. By David Stearns' logic, as he did with his time in the Brewers organization on a more restricted payroll, by the way, that even if everyone else is baseline, 1 or 2 of these signings can prove to be the difference. Now that we've covered the more questionable pitching side, looking at the offensive side of the ball can be the difference for the Mets this year. When it comes to the Mets offense, there are certain players that you can basically slot in as just about everyday players. Barring injury, that core of Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Brandon Nimmo are safe to say that they can play just about every single day. Hey, if you're feeling generous, you can throw in Starling Marte in there too, who will have another year on his contract even after this one. Those five players will be who the Mets look to on a regular basis to provide that veteran leadership and experienced production. In terms of other starters, and I guess you could say who aren't paid like the other ones yet, but Francisco Alvarez is a staple behind the backstop. With extension talks lingering over his head, I mean, rightfully so, why not? If you had the chance to lock up a franchise player early on, wouldn't you? In terms of offensive additions, once free agent Harrison Bader was claimed by the Mets and acquired for this season at $10.5 million. $9.5 was his contract and a $1 million signing bonus. Bader should be fun to watch and provide much needed defensive flexibility in the outfield. In the infield, Mets claimed Zach Short off waivers from the Tigers in November and also signed infielder and utility man Joey Wendell to a one-year, $2 million contract, who should provide much needed defensive flexibility around the infield. Luis Acuna, reigning NL MVP Ronald Acuna Jr.'s brother, who the Mets got in the Max Scherzer trade last year, is highly touted and on the spring training roster as well. The Mets infield is a tricky debate, especially even more so after Ronnie Mauricio will miss just about all of the 2024 season due to surgery this winter to repair a torn ACL. Eesh. With 4 out of the 5 infield positions solidified, it does leave one, third base. Now, depending on who you ask at this point, you'll likely get a different answer as to who should be playing third base, with the two answers likely being either Brett Baty or Mark Vientos. It's really tough to assess right now, which is why this is a pre-spring training video, to see how each performs as spring training goes on. While it is trending towards Brett Baty having the position to lose while Vientos DHs, I still wouldn't count out Vientos out of the mix just yet. In terms of the outfield, expect Tyrone Taylor and DJ Stewart to make their impacts at the big league level. Around spring training, Ben Gamel, Trace Thompson, Taylor Colway, and Mets prospect Drew Gilbert all received invites for the position. Around the infield for non-rostered invitees, look out for names like G-Man Choi, Kevin Parada, Luke Voigt, Jose Iglesias, among others, and a familiar face in Tomas Nido at catcher, as well as another highly touted prospect in Jet Williams, who will try to make their impacts known. In terms of non-roster pitching invitees, watching out for names such as Yaxel Rios, Kyle Crick, Dominic Hamill, Chad Smith, Nate Lavender, Christian Scott, and Mike Vassell, among others, looking for their chance to impress. While the Mets spring training roster is very inclusive, unfortunately making a big league roster is a very exclusive thing. And not many of these players will make the roster opening day, but spring training can tell a lot very quickly. As the Mets get ready to embark on another year, there will be a lot of questions that arise throughout the season. It's natural. It's a baseball season. The Mets got tested with their first one yesterday in Kodai Senga's injury. How are they going to bounce back from this setback? It's going to be very interesting to see where the positions fall leading towards spring training and moving forward. Are the Mets the well-oiled machine that the Atlanta Braves are? No, actually far from it. But the Mets can take a lot of notes out of the Atlanta Braves book, and it feels like the general aura around this team, at least from reading and watching them every day in spring training, seems to be that they just don't care about the outside noise. They're a team, and they understand that. Everything that happens within the confines of those walls is going to be what they can handle and take care of and have control over. The Mets still have faith that the core collective of players can get them over the hump. It's going to be very interesting to watch as spring training begins, and hopefully I covered a lot of what to expect. But there's also going to be unwritten things that we may never see or unfold on the surface over time or in real time. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. I will personally be down in Port St. Lucie in a month from now. I am very excited, and I'll bring you some coverage down there and hopefully see what's changed and what we can expect going into opening day. Mets play the Brewers on the 28th of March to begin the season at Citi Field. Should be a very fun season, and I'm very, very excited for spring training to kick off. For WFUV Sports, I'm Dan Bartels, and I'll see you again soon.